Well, many are predicting the death of public schools and the rise of independent and private schools. Why? Well, they're perceived to be better. Is that always the case? This is Tonight. I'm Bruce Whitfield. Tonight I'm speaking to Stacey Brewer. She's the co-founder of Spark Schools, about the phenomenon of the rise of the private school. Before we get into the broad concept of what's going on in education, Spark Schools, you went to Gibbs, you did your MBA. Your thesis was you could start a school whereby you can use gadgets, electronic gadgets, to help educate kids, to mark their progress. And people went, that's very nice, well done, here's a certificate. But you've actually gone out and done it.
Absolutely.
How many schools have you got?
We've got 4 schools, Bruce. We launched
all in Joburg?
All in Joburg. Currently, we launched our first school in 2013, and 2 and a bit years later, we're running 4, and we're in the process of opening another 4 schools by the end of the year.
That must be more 1,000 kids or so?
Yeah, we've got over 1,100 children. By the end of the year, well, going into 2016, we'll be serving about 3,000 children.
Where are you getting teachers for these kids?
So ideally, the teachers that we recruit at Spark are graduates. We really believe in the passion, the energy that they bring into Spark. So we recruit on mindset and potential, and then we spend about 250 hours a year training and developing our staff.
But what about experience versus fresh meat, if you like, off the university teaching block?
Experience for us doesn't necessarily mean quality, and so we'd rather we recruit on mindset and potential, so people that are completely committed to what Spark is about and the potential to want to grow and to focus completely on the child. And we're finding it generally, it's with the younger generation, it's with graduates that are just coming out of university that are really eager to learn and grow.
But is it also not in the basic philosophy of education that you're espousing, and that is a technologically enabled education? You're wiring kids' brains differently to those that are going to school and getting traditional lessons out of books.
No, absolutely. And another part of it for the teachers is actually creating a very data-rich environment. So in traditional schools where you've got assessments that happen, you know, maybe once a week or twice a week, we've got testing happening all the time, but the children don't even realize it with the software that they're interacting with. And we gather data, and then the staff, they look at the data to inform instruction. So we know down to micro objectives how children are achieving. Now,
Johnny is the next Nobel Prize winner and is exceptional, and there are no worries about Johnny. But the rest of the class, there's a middle group that is doing okay, and they're absolutely fine. They're in line with expectations. There's a group of 2 or 3 at the bottom of the class that are underperforming. How then do you manage that dynamic? Because you have a responsibility now that you know exactly what's going on to deal with it.
So with the bottom, say 20% of all our class, they get extra tutoring because we know down to objectives. So example, if they are struggling in maths, what is it? Is it addition? Is it subtraction? Is it single digit? Is it double digit? And then with that knowledge, with that information, we then, with those children that are really struggling, the bottom 3, if you want to say, we then give them specific direct instruction so that they get up to speed. On the computer, with a software that they're interacting with, the software also realizes that they're struggling, and so it allows for a lot of reiteration in order to master those foundation skills.
So almost you could be sitting at the back of the class doing your own thing and playing catch-up, where Johnny, who's at the front of the class, teacher's pet with his hand up all the time, at the risk of being beaten up by his classmates, is possibly going ahead?
Absolutely. So each child is on their own growth path. It doesn't mean that everyone is lumped. As we know, in a traditional setting, generally teachers teach to the middle. And sorry for the guys that are really strong, because you're just going to have to wait. Where with our model, you don't.
How does that then fit in with a traditional curriculum, though? Because you've got to teach a curriculum that by the time these kids get to matric, everyone's writing the same matric exam.
Sure.
So how do you achieve that?
So we CAPS align, which legally you
in
meet.
English is what?
It's our national standards. Okay. So we meet it as
align.
Yes. So we meet it as a basic expectation, but then we extend based on international expectations. So for example, in grade R, children are only expected to count to 10. Our children can count to at least 100. Often we are seeing with our children, they're coming into a system where they're behind international expectations. So generally we're paying catch up, and then accelerating based on international expectations. So our children grow 1.5 years within a year in order to reach what's required overseas.
Okay, so you've got this model, which then the software comes from where?
So we source it internationally. So our literacy program comes from Australia, and our maths program comes from the US. a big thing about the actual software that we use, it's really about what data can we gather. And generally the local software providers...
So you can put your curriculum on top of the data,
yes.
on top of the data collection mechanism.
Yes, you just align it, especially for math. You know, 1 + 1 is 2.
Yeah.
So you just match the...
I was wondering.
So you just match the objectives to what the national expectations are, and then seeing, okay, so we benchmark against Singapore for our maths. What are they expecting for our children to be
Because Singapore kind of ranks at the top.
Number one, yeah.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, when you look at all of this, and South Africa critically short on maths and science literacy. We're absolutely bottom of the world. I was chatting to Naledi Pandor, the Science and Technology Minister, at the World Economic Forum last week, and she's putting a lot of stead in the SKA project, for example, as this catalyst for training. That's not going to fix it. What's going to fix it is teaching kids properly at the start.
Absolutely, and the mastery of foundation skills, and that's the idea of Spark, because you can't build on anything.
Are you training a new generation of immigrants, though? No, is that the risk?
No, I mean at Spark we have core values, and one of our things, our core value, we say service. We serve our classmates, community and country, and we want our children to be socially aware and very proud to be South African.
Where are these kids coming from that are coming into Spark? Because it's a new concept in South Africa anyway. You've got to be quite a gutsy parent to risk the foundation phase of your kids on something brand new. What exists may not be perfect, but we went through it, so we understand that it works up to a point. You've got to have guts as a parent to commit your kids to the new way.
I think in our first year, those were the real gutsy parents. You know, they really believed in something that wasn't even existing yet, and they saw something there, some vision. I think the parents now, why they come to Spark is word of mouth. And in terms of what type of parents we attract, all sorts. All races, all economic backgrounds. We have children that are sponsored from orphanages to executives of certain banks, healthcare companies, and that
the parents have got one common thread running through them, and they want the very best for the kids.
Absolutely.
So you've got 1,100 kids now. You'll have 3,000 by the time the year starts next year. Still a Joburg focus.
Well, we're actually opening our first school in the Western Cape next year. So.
Okay, and where is that? Is the physical location? Where is that going to be?
We haven't announced it yet.
Oh, we haven't announced it yet. Well, you could use this as an opportunity, Stacey. But the fact is there is a hunger. One looks at the exponential growth of Curo, for example, and they've grown beyond the original prospectus that they published 5 years ago, whenever it was. One looks at the expansion of Redmond, of Crawford College, and all of that sort of stuff. They've got big money behind them. Where does the Spark money come from?
So we've got investors as well, and currently our investors, it's Pearson, but it's linked to the Affordable Learning Fund, which is a fund out of London and New York, where they're based. And so Pearson, they've put in a significant amount of money for us to grow up to 8 schools going into next year, and now we're in our next round of funding.
Okay, and where does that, I mean, does Pearson then go, it's working quite nicely, we'll extend?
That's what we hope.
Okay.
Yes, so we're currently in negotiations.
Because Pearson is the world's biggest education group, isn't it? I mean, they want a foothold in fast-growing education sectors. This sector must be one of the fastest growing. Now that tourism has been lumbered by visa regulations, education's going to be
absolutely.
A rapidly
and
growing
I think
area.
especially the low-fee private school sector. I mean, since we started in 2013, we've already seen another 4 or 5 different schools just in Joburg start with the same idea of growing a network.
I mean, would you class yourselves in that low-fee segment?
Yes, absolutely. I know it can be argued that is 15,000 Rand a year low fee, but the idea is Spark's total cost to educate is one of the lowest in the country.
Relative to St Mary's and Bishops, and it's low fee.
Very low fee.
It's low fee. How does the business then evolve? Because one looks at Curo and they were low fee too, but they've gone and acquired big established schools, and now they've got a multi-segmental approach.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, because at the moment Spark's focus is to start schools greenfield from the ground up. We're not about acquiring. Our idea is that we will keep our school fees as it is, because we benchmark on the government's total cost to educate on what we want to be, because we need to provide a model that's affordable to the country. So at the moment there's the evolving of the business is just opening more schools, but not acquiring at this stage.
We saw a very courageous move by Panyaza Lusufi, the MEC of Education in Gauteng, putting iPad or electronic devices into schools, now withdrawing them because the schools were getting broken into and the devices were being stolen. It's one of the tragic realities of South Africa. The crime is a problem, and if you've got a vulnerable place where high tech is kept, how does Panyaza Lusufi get around this? Because he's trying to do what you're doing on a government on the basis of government schools, and he's right.
No, absolutely.
But the society is flawed.
I absolutely, and I mean, as we're speaking, we're having cameras put up across all our schools because we've had 2 break-ins. Where it's really the cost is we use Chromebooks, we don't use tablets, and so we just got to make sure that it's always locked up.
And put a note on it saying this is worth nothing to you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, our Chromebooks are definite because we just shut them down. They just become null and void for any user.
What is the growth story of this business? Because you're in a sweet spot at the moment where nobody else is doing exactly what you're doing, but people will see the proof of concept, and the Crawfords and the Redhams of the world will go, we like that, and are bound to follow suit. And then you run the risk of losing that uniqueness.
Absolutely. I think at Spark we've always got to constantly keep our competitive edge about the innovation. So already now going into third term, we are piloting our intermediate phase, which is really advancing the use of technology integrated into the system. We are moving from a lab rotation to a flex model.
And in English.
So we're moving to, currently we've got a system where the children rotate in and out of a computer room fundamentally, but now we are moving to have the computer room, the classroom all in one big space. So if you go into it, perhaps it just looks like a huge call center. In one space you'll see children working on computers, another area you'll see children working independently on project-based learning, and another area you'll see the children with the teachers, and then they will be rotating in that type of
Would
style.
you go into a partnership with a Curo if they said, we like what you're doing, we'd like to utilize, or is this war in the education space?
It's not, no, it's not war in the education space.
Competitive.
It's competitive, absolutely. If we would be very pro working with government first and foremost. You know, Spark has started to be a showcase to the country on how we run schools both financially and academically. So if we started getting attention from government on this, you know, helping them or influencing change, then we'd be there in a heartbeat. When it comes to other private schools, it's worth discussing. I think at the end of the day, we've all got to serve the children of the country. It's to everyone's benefit. And we could see ways of working together.
Have you had any of those discussions with government? Is government beginning to pay attention to what you're achieving?
Yes, government is starting to pay attention. There's different pilots that are happening across the country that they are doing, and they've coming to visit Spark quite a bit, especially from a technology base. And our use of the internet, you know, often people say, oh, it's too expensive, but the way we've set it up, we run a very light system that's very affordable, so people are coming to speak to us about it.
Stacey Brewer, from 0 to 100 in not very long at all. Stacey Brewer is the co-founder of Spark Schools, low-cost private schooling using technology to enhance the process. Thank you for watching. There'll be more tonight, tomorrow. Till then, good night and goodbye.